Welcome, NFL football fans. It's that time again. Time for another edition of NFL Football Talk. I'm your host, Charles E. Smith Jr. This is an Inside Sports production, and here we are. We started with 12 teams in the playoffs. We are now down to the Final Four. We'll see who will be advancing to the Super Bowl this coming weekend. As you know, I do not work alone here. I do only enlist the help of the very, very best to help me break down all these games and all the changes, all the news in the NFL and everything else you might want to know. So here he is from an undisclosed location somewhere in beautiful Southern California. None other than the man many of you already follow on Twitter at Chris L Sports, Chris Lardieri. What's happening out there, man?
Charles, great as always. Thank you for the intro. Still trying to recover from what I term the last great full weekend of football, and boy, did it live up to it, and then some.
Yeah, it did. And I mean, all four games, all decided by 7 points or less. Even the game that started out 31-0, which was that Panthers and Seattle Seahawks game. But it was great because all of a sudden it's 31-24 and everyone's on the edge of their seat for that last onside kick.
Yeah, I was having flashbacks to a certain onside kick against the Seahawks last year, not executed by Green Bay, but Thomas Davis, I think, should have gotten the game ball, player of the game, whatever, donut after the game, orange peels, because not only was that key that he caught it, but I mean, he got upended and still hung on to that ball. And just, I mean, made for a second half was unbelievable, and what everyone thought was going to be a blowout.
Yeah, fantastic. So for those of you maybe not in the know, maybe you live in a cave or you've been traveling abroad or something, top two teams in both conferences made it. In the NFC, the Carolina Panthers and the Arizona Cardinals. Then the AFC, we have the Denver Broncos and the New England Patriots coming through. New England taking care of business against the Kansas City Chiefs. The Denver Broncos really that was a snoozer against the Pittsburgh Steelers. And the Steelers, their quarterback is injured. Their best wide receiver, quarterback was injured, but he still played. Their best wide receiver out of the game due to concussion. That was Antonio Brown. Then they were down to two, I think, running backs. Where did they get them from? The practice squad or something? And it really came down to one of the running backs fumbling in the fourth quarter that gave the Broncos that was a really tedious game. I kept wanting to just fast forward to the end to see how it ends, you know?
Yeah, it's funny you mention that. I kind of strategically scheduled a haircut for my son in the first half of that game. I'm glad I did because I sat back down right around the time the game started to get interesting again, and me having hopes that I would pull a perfect 4-0 sweep with the picks last week. But thank you, Fitzgerald Toussaint. I didn't even know who you were until you fumbled that ball.
Yeah, and you know what? I saw that game, and I was watching the way that Peyton Manning was playing for the Broncos, and his tentative throws, him being skittish, and you could tell he was really that team was being managed to a victory, was what it was. Manning was not really a part of that, and I thought back, when did I see him do that before? And that was in Super Bowl 41, the one Super Bowl he did win. So I looked up the stats, and here it is. In Super Bowl 41, Peyton Manning, 25 of 38 passing, 247 yards, was sacked once, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Against the Steelers, he was 21 of 37 for 222 yards, sacked once, no touchdowns, no interceptions. It's really almost identical. That's why it looked that way. And, instead of facing a Rex Grossman on the other side, he faced a depleted Steelers offense, which is basically about the same thing.
Yeah, Charles, you're really good with the numbers there. Good observation, and I think Paul D. Podesta in Cleveland might be calling you soon to come work with him. But, you want to talk about managing a game. Trent Dilfer thought that game was managed well. On top of that, let's not forget, Charles, the play where did he give himself up? Was it a sack or not, completing that pass late in the fourth quarter? Some controversy there, but it counts as one of those completions.
Yeah, I reckon so. And then the Green Bay Packers, that ending, that game against the Arizona Cardinals. And talk clock management again. I give Aaron Rodgers props for throwing that Hail Mary there at the end. And just like he did against Detroit, which I talked about he wouldn't be able to do what he did against Detroit, and lo and behold, he went and did it. but the clock management by the Arizona Cardinals down the stretch, that time never should have been on there.
Absolutely atrocious, and I think the Cardinals were extremely lucky to win that game. And throwing a pass on second down, it wasn't even a pass that would have killed clock too if it had worked out. I don't get it. I don't know if Bruce Arians is trying to outsmart himself or what, but watching that, and the 4th and 20 pass from the 5 was phenomenal. But that pass, I said it, was watching the game with some family, and I said, bat the ball down, and where is Larry Fitzgerald in the end zone? And I'm having flashbacks to Calvin Johnson on the sidelines. And Patrick Peterson went for the interception. Granted, it was a tremendous throw and catch, but you bat the ball down. Do not be a hero. That said, that drive, the subsequent coin flip that wasn't a flip, and then the Cardinals drive may have been some of the best 5 minutes of actual football time I've seen maybe in my life.
Yeah, and when you go back to last season when the Packers lost in overtime to the Seahawks, and then this time in overtime to the Arizona Cardinals, Packer fans, this is almost more than they can take. Watching their team, and I guess the Packers have just enough defense for 60 minutes of football. Because if you remember against Seattle last year, when they went into overtime, Seattle just kind of marched down, crunch, 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 touchdown, and here it was. What did it take the Cardinals? Was it 2 plays or 3 plays? And they were done. First play is Larry Fitzgerald runs 75 yards just weaving his way through the defense. Yeah,
ridiculous. And Palmer spinning away to elude a sack and bumping into his own guy.
Right.
I mean, unreal. But yeah, you make a good point. Unless they change the overtime rules and both teams touch the ball after a touchdown, I think the Packers may want to work on a little bit of endurance or maybe some overtime defense. I know there's a lot of controversy about the play calling and who handles that, but I think it's time to focus on the defensive side of the ball now, don't you?
Yeah, I think so. So, and as I said about defensive players in overtime, you know what? Defensive players get paid too. So that's the way that goes. But, one of the other games, and we all expected New England took care of business against Kansas City, just methodical. We knew it would happen that way. But the Pittsburgh game, Pittsburgh and Denver. Now, what about Mike Tomlin? Under fire sometimes. What kind of observations have you made about him, his coaching, and maybe questionable play calling at times?
I like Tomlin. I've always thought he was a good coach. Not only winning a Super Bowl, and we've talked about this. Did he win it or can Whisenhunt lose it? Regardless, the guy won a Super Bowl, but then he got his team there the second time and nearly beat the Packers. But I've been reading some buzz on the internet about Tomlin, particularly out of Pittsburgh, and they question his play calling. Is he really a good game manager? Much like the knock on Pete Carroll in Seattle. And the more I watch, especially here down the stretch and in the playoffs, I've got to agree. Early in the game, the Steelers have a 4th and 1. I get it. It's a long field goal. The wind's swirling. Go for it. Kudos to that. To throw a bomb into the end zone, which regardless may or may not have been catchable, why are you making that call? I know it's the first quarter. You look at what he did the previous week in Cincinnati, going for 2 in a situation where you could or couldn't, and it almost ended up costing him the game. I think I think there's some validity there, and I know other people have taken note. And when you win a Super Bowl, you look at Tom Coughlin, that'll buy you a free pass for so long.
Right.
But this kid keeps up, he's going to start getting a reputation like Andy Reid does with letting the clock run down.
Well, and we have to look at Pittsburgh too. Pittsburgh does not change coaches a lot. It was Chuck Noll, it was Bill Cowher, it was Mike Tomlin. That's pretty much all anyone's known in the whole. Once the Steelers have risen to prominence, so they're not going to be quick on the trigger. But let me tell you, there's a fine line there too, because Tomlin, you can tell he's trying to win every time out. I give him that. He's not playing scared. But now you got in Carolina, got Riverboat Ron. But then you got Tomlin in Pittsburgh, and you'd have to agree there's just a very fine line there between going for it and being a little bit foolhardy.
Yeah, and I'm not by no means am I saying Tomlin should lose his job, but he may want to get someone to babysit and maybe some sort of quality control with the play calling or clock management or things like that. But that said, you hear all this thing, well, coaching's overrated. Only really doesn't make a difference between wins and losses all that much. I beg to differ, because you look at a lot of these games, you go back to the Super Bowl last year, you look at how Belichick, even at their win, and I picked the Patriots over the Chiefs because ultimately I thought Belichick was a better coach than Reid, but Belichick throwing the ball when you're trying to run the clock out, Arians.
Right.
I mean, these are things now. Yeah, they'll get you a win in the divisional round or the wild card round, or so be it. But championship weekend and Super Bowl Sunday, these little things can make or break a championship. So I disagree. I mean, every decision has a consequence. But now we're heading here into late January and the first weekend of February. They're going to be just even under more of a microscope.
Yep, here we go. So, championship weekend coming up, or championship Sunday, I should say, coming up. AFC, we're going to have the New England Patriots going to Denver, and then the later game is going to be the NFC. We're going to have the Arizona Cardinals going to Carolina. So, picks of the week, we can go ahead and get into that now. So, last week, we both went 3-1. So, for the segment, here we are in our own playoffs here. I'm sitting at 6-2. My esteemed colleague, right behind me at 5-3. But we're doing a lot better. Last year I checked it. At this point, you were at 6-2. I was at 3-5. So, I'm getting a little bit of redemption here. But let's go ahead and get into this. Now, the AFC. We'll go ahead. The defending champion New England Patriots against the Denver Broncos. We watched the Broncos last week, watched the Patriots, and, when I look at this, and it's like what we were talking about earlier, I think with Manning, the way he played last week, and then you talk about, Osweiler, was he injured? Maybe injured, that's why he didn't come in. But I really don't see with Denver, I can't see them winning the same type of game against New England that they won against Pittsburgh. New England is healthy right now, they're playing well. So I got to go with, in this, I believe, is the 16th meeting between Brady and Manning. And I'm going with Tom Brady in this one. So I got the Patriots going to the Super Bowl yet again. What do you think?
I'm going to agree with you. The Broncos barely beat an inferior team. I heard an unbelievable statistic today. I know he didn't play the whole season, but Peyton Manning has one touchdown pass in Denver this season, and I don't see that changing this week. The history's there. Brady has Manning's number. Belichick knows how to defend him, etc. The guy's not healthy. If you stop the run, you can beat the Broncos, and I'm confident that the Patriots can do that. On the flip side, I know they played each other earlier this year, and Osweiler led a great comeback, but let's remember, Edelman was out, Gronk got knocked out of that game, and someone I don't know fumbled a punt that turned the game around, and I don't see that happening this time. I see the Patriots going back to the Super Bowl, and I will also go on a limb and predict that there will be no issue with the air pressure in the footballs on Sunday in Denver.
I don't think so either. It's just going to be an old man gasping for air in that mile-high, thin air up there in Denver. So I think this is Peyton Manning's swan song, and unfortunately it's not going to be a pretty one. So, yeah, we both got the Patriots. Now, the NFC matchup, all the intrigue over there, Arizona Cardinals and the Carolina Panthers. This is a rematch from last year. They met in the playoffs last year, but that was with Arizona having Drew Stanton at quarterback because Carson Palmer was injured. Now they're going to be at full strength. I really didn't like the way Carson Palmer played last week against the Packers. I think he made some questionable decisions. But then again, you got the Carolina Panthers who, if we look at Josh Norman at the corner, great cornerback, but there's some good stuff available on the other side of the field where they have pretty much. Who is the other corner, the corner opposite Josh Norman? Does anyone know that? That's the million-dollar question.
No, and he's not memorable by any means.
Right, exactly. So I look for them to try that side of the field, but I just didn't like the way Carson Palmer played under pressure here. But what do you think? Carolina, though, if they get out to a big lead, this was the second time this season they almost blew a huge lead. So one thing, they can put their foot on the gas, but once they get that big lead, I don't think they know how to put it into cruise control. So what do you think about this game?
I think and I hope that the Panthers and their coaching staff realize you cannot take your foot off the proverbial gas pedal.
Right.
That said, I think this is going to be a great game, and by the way, I think the Cardinals will be in it because Ryan Lindley will not be their quarterback this year. But I digress. And I picked the Cardinals as one of my teams that could potentially go to the Super Bowl. I would normally stick with it, but for whatever reason, every time I doubt the Panthers, they seem to prove me wrong. I thought they'd beat the Seahawks last week, but I thought it'd be a close slugfest of a game, not the potential blowout it could have become.
Right.
And I like the fact that ultimately I really have a lot of faith in the Panthers defense, and I do not have as much faith in Carson Palmer even after the way he played last week.
Yeah.
I do think it'll be a great game. I really like, in terms of coaching, I'll take Arians over Riverboat Ron any day, but I think at the end of the day, the differentiating factor is going to be Cam Newton and the fact that I like the way Jonathan Stewart ran the ball after a few weeks off due to injury. I don't know why. I really should stick with my original pick, but I'm going to wuss out, hedge, whatever you call it, and I'm going to say the Panthers go to the Super Bowl. They beat the Cardinals in what I hope is an exciting game, much like the Packers and Cardinals were. Please, no more blowouts. That's all I asked for. I love these 7-point games.
Yep. So, you know what? I got to say this. From what I understand here, we'll just divulge a little bit of personal information about Mr. Lardieri. I understand you made a promise to a young man there in your household that were his favorite team to go to the Super Bowl, you would be throwing a special Super Bowl party for him. So let me just say, get ready to decorate your house in Carolina blue, because I think the Panthers are going back to the Super Bowl, getting that rematch against the New England Patriots, and this time there won't be John Casey kicking the ball out of bounds to give the Patriots the ball at the 40-yard line with just, a minute and a half remaining in the game. I like the Panthers in this game, and, like I said, I don't like the way Carson Palmer played. He made some poor decisions. He seemed to be cracking under the pressure. Thank goodness for Larry Fitzgerald, but he had all kinds of trouble with the Packers defense. Now here come the Panthers. They can bring even more pressure from that side of the ball. And, I got the Panthers. Like you said, I think it's going to be a good game also, but I'm going Carolina all the way on this one.
Yeah, and I mean, you got me. It could be a sentimental pick, but let's face it, who wants to throw a Super Bowl party when you're invited to Charles Smith's? I should be picking the Cardinals here. I should be rooting for the Cardinals. But regardless, I'll be happy. I think either of these teams could win the Super Bowl. My son, by a little backstory, when he was real little, loved that turquoise color, kind of started following the Panthers, and then as he got older, he really liked Cam Newton, and now he's a complete football maniac like his dad and has Madden and everything. He's very happy. He's got his Cam jersey. One of my best friends in the world lives in Charlotte and got it for him for Christmas. So, as a Giants fan, I probably shouldn't root for Josh Norman and his bat, but what the heck, I'm going to be objective.
Okay, there you go, folks. So it's Championship Sunday, and we're both in agreement here. We're going to go with New England out of the AFC and the Carolina Panthers out of the NFC to meet in Super Bowl 50. That'll be on Sunday, February 7th in Santa Clara. So game times for this weekend, January the 27th, we have New England at Denver. That's at 12:05 p.m. Pacific time. And then the nightcap, Arizona in Carolina. That'll be at 3:40 Pacific time on Sunday. So before we sign off here, Chris, any further nuggets of wisdom for everyone out there?
Yeah, I've kind of laid low on my little media critiques lately, but I think what the heck as we head into the Super Bowl coming in a few weeks, I think that Al Michaels and Chris Collinsworth, who, by the way, can get on my nerves at times, are by far the best 1-2 combination calling NFL games. I think that was exhibited Saturday night in Glendale, Arizona. I will miss them calling games. I would love to petition Roger Goodell to get them to call the Super Bowl every year, but I understand money talks and you've got to rotate it every 3 years. That said, look, I'm a lifelong Giants fan. Phil Simms will always hold a special place in my heart as the man who went 22-25 and got the Giants their first title. But having to endure him and Jim Nantz, when you look at last Sunday night and now heading into the Super Bowl, Jim Nantz and Phil Simms will do 3 of the next 4 NFL games on network TV. And I don't know if it's that Nance brings out the worst in Sims, or Sims is just kind of getting dingy up there in the thin air in Denver. But I don't know why. I've talked to a lot of people about this. I know Buck and Aikman annoy people, but the consensus seems to be that the people really are tired of this deal. Well, I'm interested to hear what you think.
Yeah, and you know what? I noticed that too, because Phil, it seems like he's his mouth is about maybe a second and a half ahead of his brain, is what happens. Because he's always been kind of a cerebral guy, but some of the things that he just sort of blurts out, I have found kind of puzzling myself.
Yeah, it's almost like watching a one of those video conferences when you hear the audio before you see the lips move.
Well, but then again, remember, we have to endure John Gruden through the whole season. So I think that takes away from what Sims does. Were Gruden not around and not doing Monday Night Football, I think Sims and his whatever type of commentary you call it would really be much more to the forefront. But as long as there's Gruden, Sims runs a distant second.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I guess that's like Cuba saying, as long as North Korea's around, we don't look that bad, right?
Exactly. All right, everybody. So thanks for watching. Remember, NFL football talk right here every single week. We bring you the best. This is an Inside Sports production. You can follow me on Twitter at The Inside Sports. Follow Mr. Lardieri on Twitter at Chris L. Sports. So everybody enjoy Championship Sunday, and we'll see you next week with Super Bowl predictions. Thanks for watching.